Hey guys, welcome back. And as promised, it is gear review time, and we are going to talk about some of my favorite gear. And one of the reasons why this is coming up is because one of my favorite pieces of gear has reached the end of its service life, and that is the sheath for my Busse Hog 8 knife. So this will be a bit of a review of both the knife and the sheath. I've had the sheath for about almost as long as I've had the knife. So I've had this knife for about a year, and as you see, it has been subjected to actual use, hard use. So we'll talk a bit about that, but I have, as Busse encourages, I've used the heck out of this knife, and I am a heavy user of tools. So I abuse things pretty bad. So I think I can give a pretty good review of how abusive I can be to something. So here's what has happened. First off, let's just say this is this holster was, I purchased it. I've had it for about, I'm going to say 10 months, and I'm calling it a holster because it is made by, I'm not sure if you can see that, but actually a company that makes a lot of gun holsters, Azula gun holsters. And if you can see that, I'm not exactly sure. If you can see the writing there. And it was specifically made for the Busse Hog 8, and you can see HB8 engraved there. That's how it came from them. It cost about $55. Bought it on eBay and carried this knife on a leather belt daily for, almost a solid year. And, just as you see it here. So yes, I do carry this huge knife as a daily carry knife. And as you see, it's reached a point now to where, if you can see, we have, it's starting to protrude here at the end. So at this point, it's going to end up ripping up some upholstery or something else, because like I said, I do carry this knife daily. But it was an extremely comfortable sheath to carry. And as you see, we have two different styles here. So here's a dangler style with a Kydex sheath, and your traditional leather that would go through a belt holster, so naturally would ride a little bit higher. This was extremely comfortable for daily carry, getting in and out of a vehicle, crawling around, doing things. But as you see, I can even see a little bit of shininess right there. It has reached the end of its service life, and of course I could probably repair this, but I figured it was a good time to at least talk about how much I like the sheath. And well, there's a reason why Kydex is so popular now. So more about the knife. So I really like the sheath, $55, but as you see, for a heavy user, daily carry, it lasted almost a year. Right. And, I wouldn't say it's, there's some things that can be done, but I'll just say as an honest review, it's at the end of its service life already. So, the Busse, the knife. The knife is another, I bought this off of eBay. Have several Busse knives, or, more than two, let's say. And, really, the main advantage or thing that I liked about this knife, or I do like about this knife, is the handle. So it's not your once Busse came out with these handles, even in the cold or at any point, even when it's wet, it's a lot more comfortable to carry. Some of my other Busse knives are more of a combat style knife, to where the pummel may have a jagged edge. Well, when you're carrying this thing daily and you're crawling around, and you like me, are just into a little bit of everything, but let's say just in a construction trade, it's nice to have that comfortable edge there, to know that at least you're not carrying a really huge combat knife. And I really wouldn't put this in the combat knife category. However, it's a huge knife, and it's probably intimidating to quite a few people who may see it. Okay, so we have, I did not come with any kind of paracord or anything tied to it. And as you see, I did not do the best job, but I wanted you to kind of see it as it was, because it's, become frayed and undone. But that's really my fault in how good I am with paracord. However, like I said, this thing gets a lot of use. And in fact, the cats will often chew on this as well. So I won't blame all that on my paracord. I'll blame some of it on the cats. I think that's allowed. I really like knives with choils. This has a really nice, comfortable choil. As big as this knife is, it's comfortable in the hand, and it has a fairly decent size choil here. The coating, give and take. A lot of guys get these knives and they completely take the coating off. I figure, well, since I'm going to use a knife, why not keep the coating on here? This is Infi steel, which is a proprietary steel that Busse makes. And it's more or less just their heat treat process. You can call it a proprietary steel, but in the end, it is a heat treat process and tempering process, I should say more accurately, that they have patented for their knives. And I'm very impressed with it. It is one of two Infi steel knives that I own that are Busse, and that's the only place you can get Infi steel is through Busse or one of their subsidiaries. So I really like the coating. Doesn't bother me, but a lot of guys take this coating off, and it does to a degree hinder or pick up a little bit more dirt. And as you see, as I've chipped away at some of it, it does have a tendency, because of the texture, to pick up a little bit more dirt and oils and things of that nature. So there's a give and take there as far as that goes. As far as performance goes, this thing, Infi steel, holds an edge fairly well. Right now, even though it looks like it has a decent edge on here, it's about time for this thing to be honed. Usually some light stropping will bring it good enough for most work, but it's not really a hair shaving knife right now, but it's, it's a pretty big blade. And there's probably a few spots, if I were to put this underneath a little bit more magnification, where you can see I've had maybe some slight rolling, but that's because I've used this. I've banged this. I beat nails in with this thing. And you may say, well, why would you do that with a Busse knife? Well, it's a Busse knife. I paid probably in the area of $490 to $500 for this. I think by the time it was all said and done, if I were trying to find one right now, I can't find one below $600. So, I'd call it truly maybe $700 right now if you were to look for this knife. So, even though it is, a relatively expensive knife, I like, to use it. The only downside I would say to this knife, and it's not really, it's a downside, depends on how you look at it, is that, and I'll try to zero this out. It is pretty thick. Now that's a good thing, but as you see here, it is 350 thousandths of an inch thick, more or less. So, and if you can see that, that's how it's advertised. So, depending on how you like to sharpen and what angle, you may have to play around a bit, and it depends on how you're going to use it too. But because it is thick, I like to use the Ken Onion sharpener. It still works obviously in the sharpener, but because it is a thicker blade, there's some give and take there as well, some considerations. Right now I'm carrying this because this sheath has failed me. The backup sheath, which Busse knives do not come with sheaths. So when you buy them, you have to keep in mind you're probably on your own to find a decent sheath. However, there are several companies, and we'll talk about that later, namely a company called Buy Brown, and maybe when I review another Busse knife, I have several other knife sheaths that are excellent Kydex sheaths. This sheath was made for me by a guy on the fly at a gun show, and he was a Kydex maker that was making sheaths and holsters for people at a gun show, and he had never dealt with a Busse, and he had done a lot of knives, so he kind of wanted a mold for the Busse Hog 8. And when he saw it on my hip, he said, "Hey, can I make a sheath for your knife?" So that was pretty, interesting there too. But he did want to have at least, one copy of one. So that was advantageous, but I still ended up paying the guy just because I like the sheath, and I wanted to pay the guy for his work. So right now I carry this daily as a dangler. I like danglers, so I'm used to that style, even though I carried it quite a bit like this. It's just not as easy to, I say conceal. It's a little bit more conspicuous as a dangler. But, depending on the laws of your state and where you are, most people, because I wear a uniform typically that, as a company uniform, most people just figure it's some kind of a tool like a drywall saw or something of that nature. So that is my Busse Hog 8. It's an excellent chopper, goes through woods like no one's business. Out in the garden, it is a godsend. Whether it be big, huge, sunflower seeds, sunflower stalks, or amaranth stalks, or anything, I just hack through, and it pretty much makes, light work of any brush. This has no problem batoning wood, splitting wood, actual firewood, chopping through what you would consider a log or anything of that nature, relatively thick branches. Cut through a 2x4 like it's nothing, meaning, actually chopping through it. It's an excellent chopper. So I love the Busse Hog 8. It's a really cool knife. It's a daily carry. If you buy these things, don't baby them. Go ahead and use them. What's the point? I understand there's also a lot of pretty knives that people want to put away, but anything with this resoprene or neoprene, or no, it's called I think it's a Res C handle, resoprene C handle. They're made to be used, and the handle really does, do a lot better than some of the other handle types that Busse makes as far as dealing with the elements. So this is just a really excellent, usable knife. All right, guys, you have a good one.